2022, a year of pain, sickness, and an economy teetering on the verge of collapse. And in the realm of gaming, it was no different. It feels like every studio and every game has had delays or unforeseen circumstances. But that doesn't mean that in the depths of a hurricane, there isn't an eye of the storm. Because despite what it may feel like, 2022 is hiding so many great things too. For those who have been watching me for a while now, you know my favorite genre of games is immersive sims. They offer the player at many times what feels like limitless freedom to solve puzzles in their own ways and come up with their own solutions. And Weird West is no different. It's a game from Rafael Colantonio, the creator of my favorite immersive sim ever, Prey, and is another fantastic game that highlights how great the genre is. You play as 5 separate characters, all with their own abilities and personalities, but most interestingly, what you do playing as one character earlier in the story can affect the path of your future characters as well. For example, you may decide to kill or spare an important character, or you may actually exile an entire race of people in the zone that your next character will face the ramifications of. And not only that, but you can actually go back and speak with your former self as well. Like when I recruited the bounty hunter I played as in the first part of the game, when I got to part 2 to play as the pigman. And this principle of time, choice, and consequence carries over to every aspect of the game too. When moving from location to location, we are shown a map of the world and us traveling as time passes by. Many missions in the game are time dependent, so doing too much busy work means we can fail them. And on top of this, during our travels, we can sometimes be caught out by random events too. But the crowning jewel of it all is the actual gameplay, where every bullet and every piece of equipment must be meticulously accounted for. Weapons, shovels, and most items degrade, and depending on your financial situation, ammo can be hard to come by too. So in many circumstances, the best choice was to actually figure out different ways to accomplish a task, whether that is sneaking past the guards in town and stealing the intel you needed, or throwing a barrel full of oil into a mass of enemies and shooting at it, thus making that one bullet count. This, combined with the skills for each character that can be used in a variety of ways, results in a completely open sandbox where the greatest chance of survival is your own ability to learn the game and its mechanics, not just leveling up your character's stats. It's a game where the gameplay and narrative perfectly intertwine as well, allowing you to kill important characters or NPCs at times, or let them be. For example, you can actually capture criminals that have a bounty on them and then send them to jail, and then later find them there and speak to them. At the end of the day though, what makes Weird West so special is it's just the first really great immersive sim game in so long. It has so many options for weird and fun mechanical tricks in game, and the narrative feels way more impactful because the player themselves has a huge say in the big events and also the final outcome of what happens towards the end of the game. It's one of those rare experiences where the more and more love and time you put in, the more it gives back. I actually hate westerns too, but the twists and turns that Weird West puts on the genre, and more than anything the stellar game design and narrative beats, make it a game that everyone should at least give a shot. Tale Requiem is the game that surprised me the most in 2022. I loved Elden Ring, don't get me wrong, but deep down, I sort of knew I would. But Plague Tale, I didn't even like the first one all that much. So the fact that Requiem sits atop a throne of my favorite games released in 2022 says a lot. And it's for good reason too, because Requiem tells a story not about the end of the world or ancient parasitic rats, but most of all, family. The bond between a brother and sister who are hell-bent on seeing each other thrive and who will stop at nothing to save one another. And throughout this journey, we travel to a multitude of interesting and beautiful areas. The game has some of the best art direction I've ever seen, and simply walking around the environments almost feels like you're moving through a live-action painting from the golden age of the Dutch. On top of this, the combat in Requiem is a vast improvement over the original, and actually resulted in me having fun while playing the game and sneaking around, rather than just wanting to watch it like a movie, like in the first game. But the real selling point of the game always comes down to that relationship between Hugo and Amicia. It's Hugo's childlike innocence contrasted with the growing rage inside of his older sister Amicia that plays so well against each other. There are moments in Requiem where you can truly feel the pain inside of both characters' hearts, with standout moments when you can almost feel Amicia's soul about to give out and peter away.
Please, how am I going to do this? Please. I can't.
And it's that fraternal connection between these two characters that makes the story so impactful, when you see how far Amicia goes to save Hugo, killing and becoming a monster in the process. And because of this, we too see Hugo start to build a rage inside of him alongside the macula disease that is turning Hugo into a king of hellish spawn. The journey you go on in this game is full of hopeful moments of music and dance, followed by immense screams of tragedy and a forsaken death of the world. In a lot of ways, Requiem reminds me more of a sci-fi epic like Mass Effect than a medieval romp, and that probably plays into why I like it so much. But regardless of what styles of games you like or don't like, the core of this game and the story it tells of the importance of family and love is one that everyone can connect with. There are other games that came out this year with better combat, more impressive boss battles, and a story that isn't so slow. But none of them even come close to the emotional impact that this game had, and more than most on this list, this is the game that will stick with me years from now. Requiem is the type of game that most people won't play, but the one that everyone should. For those that don't know, Cyberpunk 2077 is my favorite game of all time. And while it didn't release in 2022, like some of the games on this list as well, it's still undoubtedly one of the best experiences I've had this year. And for this year specifically, it also had the comeback of a lifetime. Sitting on patch 1.61 as of writing this, we know that a reworked police system, improved AI, and vehicle combat is coming, along with the awesome-looking Phantom Liberty DLC next year. But I'm not talking about Cyberpunk here because of those things. I'm talking about it because, the truth is, Cyberpunk 2077 was always an amazing game, and only this year is it finally in a state for most people to realize that. This game tells the most impactful story I've ever experienced in a game, and in any medium for that matter. A story about foregoing that drive to become rich, famous, and the best in all of Night City to instead find a deeper meaning in life. In love, family, and doing right by the ones you hold most close. And that's the side of Cyberpunk that no one talks about. The characters like Judy, Panam, River, Takamura, and Carrie. The moments you have in this game with these characters are like no other. There are full-on quest lines devoted to nothing but sitting and listening to their struggles, their dreams, and the fire that drives them within their soul. And alongside this is an awesome combat system full of variety, like hacking your way through hordes of enemies, sneaking through hidden ventilation shafts, or slowing down time to a crawl and blowing and slicing people's heads into a gory mess a la Doom. I know Cyberpunk is mostly known for its bugs, its glitches, and its broken promises. But now, even playing it almost 2 years after its initial release, what made this game so special to a lot of people like me is still there. It was never about the police chases, having the best AI possible on each NPC, or life paths that took over 30 minutes to complete. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited for these things to be improved as well, but Cyberpunk was really always a game about the moments. So even years later, coming back to Cyberpunk and playing it now with so many improvements and patches just goes to show how great those moments always were. If you haven't given Cyberpunk 2077 a shot yet, I promise you there's something so special about this game. There are moments where you feel like a complete badass fighting your way through hordes of enemies in a neon-lit city, followed by more poignant ones, sailing a ship to sea, listening to the riffs of a guitar fade into the night sky. And by the end of it all, this game may just teach you some of the most important lessons you can ever learn in your life, and lead you on a journey with characters and moments you'll never forget. And that's more than I can say about just about any other game out there. Also, by the way, for anyone interested in any of the games I'm talking about in today's video, like Cyberpunk, the guys at Projekt Red, and specifically GOG, actually reached out to me and helped me get set up with an affiliate code where you guys can get these games DRM free on GOG, and sometimes for discounts too, using my link. And most of all, it helps me buy a Ferrari. Thanks for the support, guys. Elden Ring is a once-in-a-lifetime type of game, not just because of the amazing FromSoft combat, spectacular visuals and sound design, or vastness of its open regions, but because of how it all comes together into one massive and unimaginably grand game. More than any other title on this list, Elden Ring is the one that truly feels like a journey, an odyssey. It's the type of game I don't necessarily want to play over and over. My first time was painful enough, especially since it was my first time playing a Souls game, but the effect that the story and voyage had on me is unparalleled. Every corner of this game is meticulously constructed and well thought out. There are secrets behind every corner and lore hidden within the description of each and every item. And because of how deep every system is, the playstyles are limitless, including blood, magic, and standard sword and shields builds that drastically change how you experience the game. Most of all though, what Elden Ring did was it refused to hold the player's hands. Where most games have mini-maps littered with map markers and objectives, Elden Ring's was much more simple, directly showing a basic layout of the land and letting you decide where to go. Each combat encounter, no matter how small, felt tense, considering how difficult even some of the throwaway enemies could be. And the boss battles in comparison were epic bouts of pure splendor. I remember when I first encountered the ancestral spirit of the Shifra Well, and the mists of an ancient and long-lost cave began to envelop me as the music swelled. This was the first moment when I truly understood how great this game is. And moments like this aren't fleeting in Elden Ring. They're plentiful. Each and every zone is unique, with its own character and backstory of tragic tales of love, deceit, and despair. But behind each of these fables is a sense of beauty as well. And that's not to say that Elden Ring doesn't have its fair share of problems either. Because of its scope, enemies repeat over and over, attack patterns become familiar, and the fatigue of it all can set in at times. The story is convoluted and hard to understand by design, and while I wish portions of the narrative and design were easier to digest, it's these very principles of overcoming difficulty that drives the game. Because after countless hours of fighting the same boss over and over again, and reading the lore endlessly to figure out the next step on your journey, by the time you actually beat Elden Ring, it really does feel like you've accomplished something meaningful. It's an emotion few other games can provide, but it's so powerful if you actually put in the time to achieve it. And that's why Elden Ring is so great. It's one of those rare games that, having completed it, will last with you for a lifetime. Because rather than just being a fun distraction, it aims to be a revolutionary experience. If you haven't given Elden Ring a shot, you need to. Because it's a wholly unique escapade unlike anything else out there that video games can provide. And it's one of the best games of 2022. Cult of the Lamb is a game that's hard not to love. A game about death, ritual sacrifice, and cold-hearted and sadistic murder, all wrapped in a cute and whimsical package more akin to an endearing Nintendo game. Your mission is simple. You've cheated death, and now you must kill those blocking your savior, the devil, and to do so, you need to grow more power and influence by growing an army of loyal cultists willing to do your every bidding. It's part Stardew Valley and part Binding of Isaac, and while it sounds like a weird mix at first, in practice, it's actually really awesome. Every day has a day and night cycle where back at your home base, your followers can be instructed to do things like farming, resource gathering, or bathroom duty. Each of these activities is either a way to keep your followers happy and obedient, or a way for you to grow more powerful. You can host daily rituals and ceremonies that give you more faith for upgrades, or can cause special events to happen with a variety of effects. And juxtaposed to this is the actual combat of the game, where you must travel into randomly generated dungeons full of monsters and loot, where each room has the chance to give you new power-ups or scary adversaries. You can even sacrifice your followers in order to bring them along as a fighter in the dungeon too. And throughout all of this, you slowly unlock more zones to go to discover more power-ups, more lore, or just to have fun gambling away your money in minigames. It's one of those indie games that has so much content and different systems that it almost starts to blur the line between indie and AAA production. But what really makes Cult of the Lamb so great is how well it all comes together. It solves my two biggest issues with Stardew Valley and Binding of Isaac alike, where both games are fun in their own right, but start to feel samey after a while. The gameplay loop in Cult of the Lamb is a constant mix between city and people management to get the best upgrades possible, and your actual skills in randomly generated dungeon room combat. And each of them can influence one another too, where you can gain more power at your home base, and in combat you can find more followers to bring back home. And while I would say the game relies more heavily on its base management aspect, I actually enjoyed this because it made the combat feel more rewarding, because each time I went into a dungeon, I felt like I had something to prove, and knew each second I was away was a potential chance for something bad to happen back home, and less time building up my forces again. On top of this, the art style, music, and overall presentation is excellent, with every character being cute and terrifying at the same time. There just aren't many other games out there with an aesthetic like this either. And really, what it all comes down to is Cult of the Lamb is one of the most unique games I've played in years, conjuring up multiple different genres and ideas into one package that feels so great to play. And it's also the perfect type of game to just zone out and not think and enjoy the ride. If you haven't given it a chance already, Cult of the Lamb is well worth your time. Inside was one of my favorite indie games of the past decade, so when I heard that one of the founders was leaving the studio to found Jumpship, I was worried. But luckily, Jumpship's first game, Somerville, not only didn't disappoint, but lived up and surpassed Inside in a lot of ways. It's a game about a family finding themselves in an unfortunate alien invasion, who have to come together to survive. And while it's a cool premise, it's actually not the narrative that Somerville excels at the most. Rather, it's the moments. Right at the start of the game, you are separated from your family when an alien attack first takes place. They are forced to leave you in a basement after you die, but because of some alien tech you picked up shortly after you perished, you wake up sometime later to find everyone is gone, except for your trusty canine, refusing to leave your side for all that time. You see, there's actually no dialogue in Somerville at all. It's a game built entirely on show, don't tell, similar to Inside. And so it's moments like this with your dog and reuniting with your family that make it so special. These moments of finding a sweeping vista and being met with a swell of music and sound effects. And all along the way, we are told a somewhat convoluted but basic story of a family trying to survive. And yes, the puzzles do get repetitive, the gameplay is bare bones, and it would be hard for me to argue I actually had a ton of fun while playing Somerville. There were so many times that I was simply frustrated about a puzzle that made no sense or was laughably easy. But that's not what this experience is about. It's about creating the sense of wonder, intrigue, and introspection in yourself, and finding the beauty in a world cast into Armageddon, and piecing together for yourself what is going on before the final acts and crescendos of this journey. To me, the best indicator that a game was good is that it made you feel something, whether that is laughing and making memories with friends, or crying at characters on the verge of death, or simply basking in the mundane yet beautiful world around us, like Somerville. To me, what makes a game or experience truly beautiful is its propensity to make you feel. And well, if we're going by that metric, Death Stranding is in a league of its own. I get why a lot of people don't like it. After all, at the end of the day, it's nothing more than just a delivery simulator where the main gameplay loop is simply trying to not fall over while you walk. But what seems simple and boring on the surface is housing an experience like no other. Because what really makes Death Stranding so special is those little moments between each of those deliveries. Like when you finally make your way through a heavily congested BT area only to find a sprawling vista stretching across an expanse that seems endless. And it's in those exact moments that the music kicks in. And as you make your way down a massive hill to the next destination, the game comes to a standstill, leaving you only with your thoughts. It's the kind of experience that, at least for me, I crave so much when I play. That sense of inexplicable beauty, of developing meaning from the mundaneness of something that meant nothing at all. Death Stranding tells a strange and twisting story full of horror and interesting sci-fi elements. And throughout its entire runtime, I wanted to know more. And a big reason for this is because of how well constructed the world really is. When I first made my way to the center of America in-game, I was confused on why we were taking a boat from the east. It wasn't explained explicitly and seemed like an oversight, considering there most definitely isn't an ocean sitting in the middle of America. But it's these exact moments that make you think and realize the deeper meaning, like how the BTs relate to the sea and how the waves have taken over large portions of the continent from massive craters, or how the advent of timefall and the rain has led to the massive amount of desolate wastelands since the fauna has aged so quickly. In a lot of ways, Death Stranding is pretty boring. If you told me all I would be doing all game was mainly walking from point to point, I wouldn't be interested. And in all honesty, that's really what you're mostly going to be doing here. But more than anything, Death Stranding shows that it isn't about the destination. It's about the journey, as cliche as that sounds. Because while walking over massive hills using ladders and zip lines is actually way more fun than you would think, the real core of this game is its ability to give you these moments that will last with you forever. Narrative revelations you didn't expect, and beautiful environments that simply let you walk and take in the breeze and music. I can't think of any other games that made me feel like Death Stranding did. And while this is the type of game that many of you will get bored with within the first few hours, for some, it might just be one of the most meaningful game experiences you've played in a long time. I feel like the moments is what gives it life, dude. And same in your life, man. Those moments of whatever it is, man, working hard and conquering a goal or becoming a man, a woman, or just enjoying life, dude. I love shit like this, which is why I really enjoy this game so far, for sure. Like, dude, moments like this, like, what other games have this, man? Like, cause so many games have, you know, solid gameplay and you know, and it's fun, but I feel like not a lot of games make you feel something, and that's just why I love Cyberpunk too, you know? This is the moments, dude, that you remember forever, dude. I'm not gonna remember just that cool shootout I had in Gears of War or Halo or anything, right? I'll remember playing with friends, but, like, dude, this shit stays with you, man. One of my favorite things to talk about on my YouTube channel is underrated games. Games that are a perfect example of what makes the medium so great, but never got the love they truly deserved. Games like Prey, Inscription, and Titanfall 2. But maybe the least well-known of all games like this, and the one that certainly is deserving of much more love, is a little indie game called Fury. You see, 2022 was the first year I finally got around to playing it, and I couldn't believe how awesome it is. It's a boss rush bullet hell mixed with fast-paced melee combat, a formula not too unheard of in the indie space. But what makes Fury so great as well, first of all, is the music. In fact, if you take anything away from this video today, it's not even to download any of the games I talked about, but rather to check out the Fury soundtrack. Its bombastic and more dreamy tracks illuminate every single boss battle you are in, and even more so paint the ambiance for your walk between each area. Because in Fury, it's about how the game makes you feel. Having to fight a boss over and over again to figure out their moveset, feeling like it's impossible to parry each swipe of the sword until you finally figure out that majestic pattern. If anything, Fury reminds me more of a rhythm game than a generic hack and slash shooter, because it's only by becoming in tune with the music of each boss and their chaotic but learnable movesets that the dance that you must play to win falls into place. It's a dip between dodging attacks, parrying onslaughts, and getting in hits in the exact moments of brevity. It's some of the most satisfying combats and wins I've had in gaming, and it's all accompanied by this amazing soundtrack, unique art style, and a story and characters that certainly leave a mark and more questions than answers. And the best part about Fury is it cuts out the fat. There aren't any boring fetch quests, there isn't a giant open world to explore. Rather, it's about that perfectly refined journey where each boss has a specific mood that they are trying to hit, and each being wholly unique because of it. On top of this too, there isn't huge upgrade paths with multiple powers and abilities. Instead, Fury has a very basic but fast-paced moveset that only grows in intensity based on the foe you're up against. And because of this simplicity, the game is free to focus on the more important aspects of making sure the combat that is in the game is fluid and fun to play. At this point, Fury is nothing more than a small indie game with a fleeting player base. But if you haven't already, you owe it to yourself to play this just because it is one of the most underrated games of the past decade that no one's talking about. And worst case, you're going to be adding a lot of songs to your playlist. If you asked most people what their favorite FPS of 2022 was, they would probably say Modern Warfare 2. And while having proximity chat in Warzone is one of the best decisions COD's made in years, for me, far and away the best FPS that I played in 2022 was Titanfall 2. It's another game that didn't come out this year, but one I finally got around to, and boy am I happy I did. Far and away, the campaign of Titanfall 2 is the best of all time in the genre, and it's not even close. While it's extremely short, each and every level is distinctive and memorable, whether it's running across the sides of collapsing buildings, teleporting through time itself on the fly to dodge bullets and traps, or being thrown in mid-air between fast-moving spaceships. Titanfall 2 is everything I loved about old-school FPS games, mixed into a more fun-to-play modern package. The gunplay is exciting and precise and feels amazing to play. And even more, it's the immaculate movement incorporated into the gameplay loop that elevates this game beyond anything I've played in recent memory. Fighting even basic enemies feels rewarding, and just when the gameplay begins to feel samey, a new bombastic spectacle is thrown at you, or a new mech appears, allowing you to pick up a new playstyle on the fly. I know I always talk about the moments and meaning in games, and truly that is what means the most to me. But sometimes gaming is just about having fun too, and going by that metric, no game even comes close to Titanfall 2. It's the most fun I've had while playing a video game in a long time, because the single player and multiplayer alike are tailored so that every single moment you are playing is pure bliss. There is no downtime, there is no super distracting story. Rather, it's all about feeling like a badass in every moment, moving at breakneck speeds and one-shotting enemies on the go. It's a shame that this cult classic doesn't get more love, and I truly am hoping that one day we will get to see a Titanfall 3, because if it can live up to even half of what the second game did, it will be another masterpiece. So that brings me to the final part of this list. And instead of just talking about one game, I wanted to briefly touch on the games I played in 2022 that I loved, that are either extremely niche or just didn't make it to my full list for whatever reason. That first game is Pentiment. Funnily enough, it's a game I thought I would hate at first, with its lack of combat, voice acting, or bombastic set pieces, but the more and more I played, the more I loved it. For example, the lack of voice acting ended up being a good thing, because it meant I could read through dialogue quickly, instead of waiting for voice actors to slowly read the lines, which helped me quickly get into the more interesting parts of this murder mystery. Also, I happen to have read a lot of books relating to many of the characters spoken about, like Aristotle and Martin Luther, and having that context while playing a faithful medieval murder mystery game made it all the better. Pentiment has that obsidian writing charm too, with many funny or witty dialogue choices to pick from in conversation, along with some light RPG mechanics to give your character a backstory and the ability to affect what people think of you. It's certainly not a game for everyone, but if it does happen to be in your wheelhouse, it's an awesome murder mystery game with many twists and turns along the way, with great historical representation of the time period. Another game that came out in 2022 that I think a lot of you guys would like is the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe Edition. It's a sequel of sorts to the original Stanley Parable I played as a kid, and it's just as good as I remembered. You play as a man named Stanley who is trapped endlessly walking around different spaces while a narrator comments on your every move, making daring insights along with funny jokes. It's a really esoteric concept, and with the new additions and stories in the Ultra Deluxe Edition, the game has only gotten better, with some of the best content the series has seen. So if you like British humor and asking yourself the biggest questions in life, look no further than the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. On top of this, another game I liked a good amount that released this year was Immortality. Calling it a game might be a bit of a stretch though, because essentially you watch a woman on her journey through a series of different movies over the decades, and as you watch clips from the movies and behind the scenes, you can locate things in the scene that will then unlock more clips for you to investigate. And what starts out as an interesting look into the film industry and one girl's life slowly unravels into a crazy mystery that no one sees coming, as you have to piece together what really happened. While gameplay-wise, I found Immortality pretty boring, the implications of the revelations you have along the way is what make it a really great experience if you're in for the mood for some mystery and intrigue. And lastly, I wanted to briefly mention a game I seem to talk about on every single list like this: Prey. It was originally released in 2017, but once again in 2022, I did my yearly playthrough of the game, and it feels like every time I play, the game gets even better. Because Prey is the best immersive simulation game ever made, bar none. There are endless possibilities in combat, an amazing story to uncover, and full and utter freedom for the player to figure out how to play in their own way. If there's one game on this entire list you should download and play right now, trust me and download Prey. Look up as little as possible, and just enjoy and thank me later. I wanted to point out that there was a lot of games this year I didn't get to play too, most notably the big hitters from Sony like Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok, and also the Callisto Protocol, seeing as I made this video before it's even releasing, so that's why some of them aren't showing on this list. But let me know down below what games you guys got to play this year and what you enjoyed most. And as always, thanks so much for watching and supporting, and I appreciate everyone that has been coming through on the streams too. And as I mentioned earlier, I now have a GOG link in the description where you guys can get most of the games DRM free while helping me get some extra money to buy dinner for my dates. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.